Hello and welcome In the Pocket Across the Pond, the UK NFL Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Alex Brindle. I'm joined just by Alex Sharples this week, and we're going to break down all things Week 7. Can you believe we're 7 weeks into the season already? It was a great week for some big running back names, not so great week for some offenses who were promised big things before the season, namely the Dolphins and the Texans. Unfortunately, we've got a big long list of injuries to read out, a lot of which are fantasy relevant players that we're not going to be seeing again this year, but we've got a nice kind of little trade to talk about as well before obviously breaking down everything going ahead to week 8, the players that we think you should be starting, the Fuggedaboutit and the game tiers. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy. Week 7, is that where we are already? Week 7?
Time flies.
I mean, week 7 of 18 though, there's a nice amount of regular season games these days. But yeah, week 7, I mean, I'm thinking of it, I don't know about you, Sharps, I'm always thinking about it kind of with fantasy in mind, and I'm thinking, oh, well, potentially my season's actually over in 6 weeks. Because fantasy playoffs start in like week 13, so it's kind of that time where it's a bit like you need to be getting your act together, you need to be making some moves probably. Let's pause that fantasy chat for the moment and look at the games that we just had in week 7 though. I think we start at Lions versus Vikings. So I suppose Lions, there was an expectation coming into the season of what this team was going to be. The Vikings, very much a surprise. The fact that this was 31-29 in favour of the Lions, who, I suppose, Sharples, were you more impressed with, or who does it leave you more confident, or who feeling good about, if you know what I mean? I suppose, who you're feeling better about, because it was a tough loss for the Vikings. They fought really hard, good win for the Lions. Who are you feeling better about after that?
Yeah, I mean, feeling pretty high on both of them. Good game, tight game, both look good offensively. I'd probably give the edge to the Lions, probably, I know, obvious because they won. But, you know, in a close game like this when, you know, they're both, now they're both 5-1. It's always nice to see those up-and-coming teams get over the edge in these kind of games. It was a late field goal that won it for him, obviously. Tense, tight, they came up with it. So yeah, positive signs, because you know when you start getting to the postseason and in that run to the Super Bowl, which have to be the expectation for the Lions. It's nice to see that they've done it when in a sort of high pressure scenario against a really good team, which the Vikings have been this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think you are left a bit more confident in the Vikings because they played arguably the best team in the NFC and put up a real fight in that game. And I think at the moment, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the AFC Championship is definitely going to have at least one team. The NFC Championship, is definitely going to have at least one team from the North, the NFC North in there. I'm not ruling out two, because are there any better teams in the NFC at the minute than the Vikings, the Lions, and the Packers?
I don't think so. No, because the sort of traditional, or not necessarily traditional, but the bigger teams of the last few years, which have been the Eagles, your Cowboys, your 49ers, they've all sort of been stumbling a little bit and not looking as good. And obviously, when come playoff time in a one-off game, those teams can beat you on any day. But I agree. I think those three that you named have all looked great. And yeah, even though the Packers are probably slightly behind in terms of record and how they've looked, we saw what they did last year in the playoffs when they knocked off the Cowboys. So really high on all those teams. Yeah.
I agree. And the Bears have got a pretty decent record at the moment as well. I just don't necessarily see the Bears doing the kind of deep playoff run this time round. But I mean, speaking of NFC powerhouses, maybe we're forgetting about the Commanders. 40-7 over the Panthers. Obviously, the Panthers are the laughing stock of the league at the minute. But the 5-2, Eagles not had the bye yet. Eagles at 4-2, and they didn't even need Jaden Daniels for most of this game. who is going to win the NFC East, Sharples?
I mean, what do we know about the Daniels injury?
What do we know about the Daniels injury?
Is he coming back?
It's week to week. So I mean, if I'm having a quick look at when the Washington bye week is, Washington bye week not till week 14, so it's not like they've got a bye week coming up and they can just give him a miss. So he's obviously going to be back before week 14.
Yeah.
Week to week tells me that you're probably not going to have him against Chicago this week. Giants divisional game. After that, divisional game and winnable game, because seeing how awful the Giants played against the Eagles, which I was really disappointed about. You're behind to want him for that. You definitely want him for week 11 against Philadelphia, is what I'd say. So, I mean, knowing nothing about the injury other than it's week to week, I would say he's going to miss this week 8. Obviously, week 9 against the Giants, divisional, so you want to win it. However, can you win it with Mariota in there? Then you've got a week 10 against Pittsburgh, and then, you need him for that game against Philadelphia, week 11, really, don't you?
Yeah, and I mean, they've certainly been the best team in the NFC so far. Hopefully it's a 1 weeker, and he comes back in. And if he only misses 1 week, I think they probably do top that division, which I can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth, because they've been such not even a middling team, they've just been straight bad. Like the team, the organisation, everything's been terrible. And then they draft a guy and suddenly it's all roses. It is unbelievable, And I think I've certainly been slating teams recently for picking quarterbacks early and then how many go off the board within the first sort of 10 picks. But every team's chasing this kind of guy, isn't it? You can just come in straight away and make it all work.
Yeah, I mean, I wish there was an exact science for it. I couldn't agree more, because it's like, what is it about the Strouds, the Daniels I suppose the Burrows when he came in, the Kylers because he looked really good for his first few years, the Herberts. What is it about them where they kind of slot in, and especially the past 2 years, what we've seen with Stroud and Daniels, change a franchise around. And so, because it can't be situation, because we've seen quarterbacks go to pretty good situations and fail, and you're looking at people like Daniels, who went to what looked like a pretty awful situation and he's thriving. So I wish there was like an exact science to it, and kind of like you can tell which quarterbacks are going to be good. I don't know, maybe it's a character thing. I don't know, but there's no doubt that you put all this stock and all this thought into kind of like, who's the coach? How's your kind of how's your organisation? How does it run? Kind of, but realistically, you get a quarterback that can play in the league, and kind of your whole team turns around.
Yeah,
it kind of sometimes looks as simple as that. But yeah, I mean, speaking of quarterbacks, Bills 34-10, very slow start, but they ended up getting the win in the end. Josh Allen, obviously, quarterback who's always in the MVP conversation. If you were to vote for the MVP today, Sharples, but I'm going to give you a list of 4 players. Who would you vote to? Because these are the players that I think today would be on these lists.
Yeah.
Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, and Jaden Daniels.
Oh, I mean, of that list, I think it would have to be Jaden Daniels, based on what we just said about taking them from absolutely nothing to a 5-2 team that looks great. However, my actual MVP is none of those people on that list, and he would never actually get the award, because obviously it has to be a quarterback. But Derrick Henry has just tipped the Ravens over the edge. Like they were losing some of those games last season because they couldn't get it done. With him, they get up to a lead, and it just feels safe. Like, and anytime they're in the red zone, whether it's Henry running it in himself or the attention that he brings, which then frees up Lamar for a run or a quick pass, it's just unbelievable. I think he has been Jaden Daniels aside, he's been the biggest difference maker, which is funny to say because obviously the Ravens were really good last year, but they didn't have that killer instinct, and I think he's brought that to them, really.
Yeah, that's such a show. That's such a show. I agree that I would love it. Obviously, if he misses more than 2 games, really, it would never go to Daniels. He's probably got the Offensive Rookie of the Year locked. But I mean, if Daniels and the Commanders played like this the whole season, then I don't know how you could argue that he wouldn't be the MVP. I think you can make a really compelling case for Jared Goff, but if it was this moment in time, I think Lamar Jackson would get it purely because he's playing better than he was last year when he got it. But yeah, the Derrick Henry one, you speak about like pushing the team over the edge and making them seem kind of unstoppable, especially on the ground. Yeah. I agree. So elsewhere we had the Colts beating the Dolphins, which nobody watched. I don't think many people watched the Rams beating the Raiders either, or the Bengals beating the Browns. I mean, obviously we had a few an injury in that game, which we'll speak about. Nice to see Nick Chubb back, though, getting in the end zone. That was definitely kind of for the fans, that one. I think this next week will be more telling in terms of what his role is going to look like, what this rushing game is probably going to look like. But a burning question that I've got is, are the Falcons any good? Because, I mean, do you not think, I mean, because this thing has kind of happened with the Falcons, and it kind of happened, it happened in Russell Wilson's first year with the Broncos. It happened last year with Rodgers and the Jets, and now because we've got Cousins and the Falcons, there's these hype teams every year, and they seem to be kind of put into primetime games a lot more, so we don't get over in England, we don't get to see them that much. So I've not seen much of the Falcons play this year. So I mean, I've seen them when they've been on at 6 o'clock, and I've watched the highlights, but I'm just a bit like, what is this team? Are they just that hype team again, like the Broncos 2 years ago and like the Jets last year? Obviously, I know Rodgers got injured last year, but are they just the hype team again?
It does feel like that, because I know, whenever they sort of go into a matchup and you think about the offensive weapons and you're looking at your projections, you're sort of licking your lips thinking, oh, he's going to go off, he's going to go off, he's going to go off. And then they've done it a couple of times this season. The last game against Tampa Bay comes to mind, when it seemed like everyone on the team got 30 points. But then they come to a game. I mean, don't get me wrong, Seahawks are no slouch, but to only get 14 points against them, if you lose a shootout against the Seahawks and it's 34-30, you can say, okay, fair play, they just outgunned us. But when you've got all those weapons and a guy like Kirk Cousins, it's really, I think it's just frustrating. And because of the hype, I think we're getting even more frustrated than we would if they were just a normal team.
Yeah, because they got thoroughly beaten this past weekend, as did the Saints against the Broncos and the Patriots against the Jaguars. Now, Russell Wilson is back in town. He's cooking. The Steelers with a huge win. The Jets. I mean, just a really quick one on this, Sharples. Is it more Steelers look good or Jets look terrible?
Bit of both. Steelers did look good. I mean, my big gripe with the Steelers is that they look great defensively, but the offense is just a bit boring. But to be fair to them, they look really good on both ends of the floor today. I mean, I think there was too many Jets fans thinking that Devontae Adams was going to slot in and suddenly solve all the problems. I do think his fantasy value has increased going from the Raiders to the Jets for certain, and I do think you'll see some big weeks from him. But yeah, it was never going to be week one for me, and with a team like the Steelers, you knew they were going to struggle offensively. It's just, can we stop them? Can it be 15-13? But unfortunately, they were clicking. Obviously, Russ back in, looking unlimited. Yeah, it is what it is, but a good win for the Steelers. And Jets just have to regroup and try and run it back next week.
Yeah, nice hustle play though on defense. When I believe was probably on Rodgers for an interception or someone fumbled the ball, but nice hustle play by Adams at one point in that game to bring someone down, the Cardinals beating the Chargers, which I almost missed because weirdly they put it on at the same time as the Buccaneers-Ravens game. Obviously the Ravens were the big win there. Almost had a repeat of the Raiders earlier in the year where the Ravens kind of let the Buccaneers hang around a little bit. You can make the argument that people like Chris Godwin shouldn't have even been on the field for the Buccaneers, but clearly they thought they could come back in the game. And then so the scoreline 41-31 probably makes it look closer than it actually was. But then obviously finally we had this Super Bowl rematch, Chiefs versus 49ers. Chiefs just completely own the 49ers, don't you think? They're just rent-free in all of those players' heads. I mean, they don't even have to play very good, especially on offense, to win. I mean, Purdy had a terrible game. Mahomes doesn't look like Mahomes this year, but why does it really matter? If do you not think there's this weird notion that they're 7-0 at the minute? Am I right in that? They played 7 games, or have they had a bye week?
6-0. I think
6-0, yeah. So they've had one of the bye weeks. So they're 6-0 at the minute, and they're not playing very good on offense. So do you think it's like they're going to be absolutely unbeatable when they kind of get things right on offense, or is it going to kind of throw the balance of the team out of whack, and they are kind of not going to be as good when they've got their offense? Which one what do you reckon is? Do you reckon they're kind of actually in a bit of a groove of digging wins out at the minute?
Yeah, I think they're just coasting now. They're doing what they need to do to get the wins. Mahomes doesn't need to go out and score 50 touchdowns. He's already done that. Doing what they need to do, really smart coaching, and I think they're going to hit the playoffs and just take it by storm. Sort of reminds me like the Greg Popovich San Antonio teams where regular season, they'd rest Tim Duncan, they were probably the best team, but they'd only get 50 wins in the regular season, and then come playoffs, they put the proper rotation in, and they just play you off the floor. That's what it feels like. They just feel totally inevitable. Certainly to be in the Super Bowl. I think in a one-off game, some of these big hitters that we've talked about, the NFC, a Lions, maybe a Vikings or a Packers one-off game could, but it just this juggernaut just keeps marching on, and I don't know how to stop them. I would agree, to be honest with you. I mean, think how long Pat Mahomes' career is going to be. He's going to be playing probably at around this level for another decade. And he's going to have years where he throws for 40, 50 touchdowns. I doubt we've seen the best statistical year from Patrick Mahomes. He'll have those years. So maybe just embrace this Chiefs team while it's here, because inevitably in those years when Andy Reid isn't the coach anymore, when he doesn't have people like Travis Kelce, maybe when the team is in transition, he's going to have all the stats but not the silverware. So obviously the priority for this team is to get to another Super Bowl and win another Super Bowl. So, what I will say is, I mean, you don't want to hear it now if you're a fantasy football player, especially if you've got Mahomes on your team. But, Mahomes' time will come again. He'll be an absolute gunslinger who throws 50 touchdowns and 4,000 or 5,000 yards again at some point in his career. That's not who he or this team is at this moment in time, though. So, but I agree. I can't remember. I definitely had them and the Lions in the Super Bowl as my prediction, so it's looking good with only one loss between the two of those so far. But I can't remember who. I must have said the Chiefs to win. I must have. But yeah, I mean, on to some fantasy players. Lamar Jackson was unbelievable. Again, 5 passing touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs was great. I mean, some fantasy managers kind of like their ears perked up a bit when they heard that Montgomery was kind of limping off the field. But he came back, very much a two-headed monster, but 160 total yards and 2 touchdowns for Jahmyr Gibbs. Rashad White, he still exists, 111 total yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. Mayfield was great again. I mean, at this point, Sharples, who for fantasy would you play over Baker Mayfield? I mean, well, if you'd have asked me that before this week when Evans and Godwin went down,
of course, there
wouldn't be too many. But now I am a little bit more worried. I've got Baker in the main league, and I've also got Joe
Yeah.
Burrow sat on the bench, so I'm sort of nervously looking at that, thinking, "Oh, is he going to be quite as good?" But he's been
Yeah.
absolutely rolling this year, been
Yes.
fantastic. But yeah, I'm a little bit worried if he can still do it without those two weapons. But we'll see how long they're out for.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been lights out. Barkley, huge revenge game, 176 rushing yards and a touchdown. Everyone on the planet saw this one coming.
Yeah.
Apart from the Giants' defense, apparently.
He broke the record for the arena, didn't he, for most rushing yards, I believe.
Yeah, and I think he was about. I think he was about 10 yards off his own PB, his own record. But there's a clip from the stands of Sirianni saying, you're close to this record, and then Saquon's like, he said, let the younguns eat, I think he said, because obviously they pulled the starters by that point. Smart decision, Saquon. Smart decision. We don't need anyone getting injured when you don't need to. Mixon had a huge game. He's back in a big way, as is Breece Hall. Good week for a lot of the kind of top-end running backs. Speaking of top-end running backs, Javonte Williams. 111 total yards, 2 touchdowns. I'll speak about him again in a little bit, but St. Brown was great, Derrick Henry was great, Russell Wilson had a nice fantasy game. Tank Bigsby. Now, if you are a Travis Etienne owner, apparently this was, again, a bit of an injury on Etienne's, for Etienne, I should say. But, I mean, worrying sight if you drafted Etienne early, because Bigsby's just looked better, has he not, this year?
Yeah, he definitely has looked better. I think, though, the only issue is he's very, in my opinion, he's quite game script dependent. So I started him this week because I thought, Patriots are terrible. Jags are also quite terrible, but I think they'll beat the Patriots and he'll get a lot of chances to run. Coming up against the Packers, I'd be a little bit more worried about that.
Yeah.
Etienne might be the way to go, but I don't think it'll be a great week for either of them, to be honest.
No, I mean, in our main league, I'm feeling... I don't want to say fortunate yet because I don't know what Nick Chubb's going to be, but I was almost going to say that I'm feeling fortunate that I drafted and stashed Nick Chubb because he could be something, because I'm watching the London game on Sunday and I am an owner of Ramondre Stevenson and Travis Etienne, and I'm sat there thinking there's no way two of my... Realistically, my two starting running backs in fantasy are both parts, or should I say, kind of not even the main part of three-headed kind of running back by committee monsters. Yeah. I mean, you've got Etienne, Bigsby, and I want to say Jermichael Hasty.
I think so.
The Jaguars.
Yeah.
And then I want to say you've got Antonio Gibson, Ramondre Stevenson, and Dearness Johnson at the Patriots.
Yes.
Let me just check that. But I mean, yeah, I'm sat there and I'm thinking, how has this happened? Oh, Dearness Johnson for the Jaguars and Hasty for the Patriots. Wrong way around. And I'm sat there and I'm like, I cannot believe this has happened. Like, and for them to be playing each other as well. I mean, I'd want out of those players. If you can get out of people in that backfield, I would want out of them, probably.
Yeah, probably too late, unfortunately. But
yeah, I know. But you had Njoku with a very nice game. Hopefully, signs of things to come with a change with quarterback in quarterback there. Bijan Robinson had a nice game. Ken Walker did as well, as did Jalen Hurts. Johnny Smith. George Pickens, hopefully he's going to be good with Russell Wilson. Brian Thomas Jr., 4 touchdowns so far this season, over 85 receiving yards in 4 of the 7 games. He looks great. Justin Jefferson, Cade Otton, and Mark Andrews. How confident would you be playing Mark Andrews going forward, Sharples? It's two decent weeks in a row now. I would say that I don't think the volume is like necessarily back to where it was, but I mean... Titans don't have volume, do they? So
no. Well, what I'm sort of finding with the Ravens so far is they only really pass the ball when they're against a team with a good offense. And given that they're going up against the Browns, think you might see a lot of Derrick Henry and not too much of the passing game. But we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, 4 targets in the past, 4 targets each game for the past 2 weeks for Andrews. 1 touchdown in one of them. 2 touchdowns in another. I mean, I'm not looking to Andrews to replicate 4 for 41 and 2 touchdowns, which is why I'm a bit hesitant. I mean, give me a bit of fantasy advice, just speaking out loud, Sharples, but hopefully this might be relevant for people who are in similar situations. So we had a 4 for 40 and 2 touchdowns for Andrews this week versus Evan Engram, who's looked good. He had 10 targets 2 weeks ago, 5 targets this past week. I mean, basically, I'm saying, are you chasing the value touches of Andrews or hopefully the volume of Engram?
I think you've always got to go volume, really, because that's. I think what when we're seeing when you look at it at the end of the season, it's the guys who've got those kind of volumes and targets that do better. I mean, we always say if a guy's had a lot of touchdowns one year, he's going to have touchdown regression. Whereas with volume, that to me is a better indicator of the quarterback's looking for you. Because the fact is, you're probably not going to score a touchdown every game, so you'd rather a guy who's getting 8-9 targets turn, as a tight end, turns it into 5 for 50 and you get a solid amount of points, rather than hoping that Andrews on 3 targets is going to get it into the end zone.
Exactly. Yeah, I would agree with that. On to some not so good fantasy players this week, though. I mean, Lou has put Malik Neighbours on here. Malik Neighbours got about 8 points, which, I mean, it is disappointing for Neighbours, but, this was an awful game for the Giants. First game back for Neighbours after a few weeks off. I'm not reading too much into this. I think he'll be fine. Cousins, terrible game. You actually saw Penix in there at one point, which was crazy. I can't believe they're just they're asking for it. The Falcons are asking for it. They're asking for kind of all this chatter, I think. Kamara, not very good. Richardson still looks terrible in real life, but the Colts won. But it's another AFC South team that I want to talk to you about, Sharps. Stroud, Diggs, and Tank Dell. Tank Dell with the goose this week. I felt for sure these players were going to have a good game this past week.
Yeah.
This offense has just stalled without Nico Collins.
Yeah, no, it has. I mean, you were unfortunate, Al. That game came up a lot on Red Zone, and I saw Tank Dell targeted at least 3 times in the end zone and just couldn't get it to go. So when I checked his score at the end and I saw it was a goose, I couldn't really believe it. I mean, Packers have been really good this year. They're a good two-way team, but. Obviously Mixon was fantastic, but for CJ Stroud to only throw for 86 yards,
crazy.
That just can't happen. I mean, in a way, you'd rather he, threw for like 300, even with a couple of interceptions, just because he's at least moving the sticks. I mean, 86. It's just it's not what we expect from that Texans team. No. Not exciting. And you're right. So much went through Nico Collins, and obviously it's going to be hard to adjust. But Diggs is great. Tank Dell's great. You would think they could come up with a little bit more than what they did.
I agree. I mean, we know that you beat this Green Bay Packers team early, and then they'll come back in the second half, which is kind of what seems to happen. Love will maybe throw a few interceptions early in the game. But yeah, the points fantasy-wise weren't even there for Stroud early in the game, which was, it's not the Texans team that we were necessarily promised.
No.
Coming into the year. Ramondre Stevenson elsewhere, though, with a bad game. Jaden Reed as well. I'm still plugging him into my lineup. Now, Hill and Waddle combined for 4.4 fantasy points. I still think it is bizarre, crazy, the kind of night and day difference with this team with Tua in and Tua out. I mean, I think Tua's a nice player. I never anticipated him. I don't know. I still don't know what Tua necessarily does to mean that this offense is so different when he's not there. Is it just they need a guy who can run it? Are they not giving the people in there a chance to open it up at all? But do you not think it's crazy how different this team is without Tua, considering Tua doesn't necessarily do anything that pops off the screen, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, in a vacuum, Tua's certainly not the best quarterback in the NFL, but he is a competent quarterback, and he really suits that McDaniel system, and specifically designed for him. So obviously, when someone else, when he gives the keys to someone else, they're not going to look as good. But I think the problem is the backups must be some of the worst backups
Yeah.
in the league as well. They clearly put all their eggs in the Tua basket, money wise, and thought they'd save on the backup quarterbacks because, my God, these guys have come in and they just look like they don't know what they're doing. I mean, they clearly weren't expected to be put in that position, but the backups have just been awful. And as someone who drafted Tyreek Hill pretty much everywhere, it's been a nightmare.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is maybe the next few weeks trade buy low on these players because Tua is probably going to be coming back soon. But Devonta Smith again, -2 yards, 0.8 fantasy points, not good. Josh Downs, not good, but that just means Anthony Richardson's back, unfortunately. Jameson Williams, -4 yards. He had your 0.6 fantasy points. Colton Sutton goosed. Zay Flowers not with a very good game. And Marvin Harrison Jr. as well, unfortunately. We're not getting what we promised there either. Injuries, though, it's a pretty long list, Sharps, this week. It's a pretty long list. We have Brandon Ayuk, season-ending ACL/MCL injury. He's done. Ricky Pearsall's going to step up, hopefully. Chris Godwin, season-ending ankle injury as well. Bad one, especially seeing as he didn't necessarily need to be in. And Mike Evans in that game had already aggravated a hamstring, likely going to be out at least a month, looking at week 12.
That's tough.
Metcalf is week to week with a rib injury. Deebo Samuel left the game with illness, diagnosed with pneumonia, no timeline for that recovery. Juju Smith-Schuster's week to week with a hamstring injury. Travis Etienne, hamstring injury as well, so keep an eye on his availability. Chris Olave is still in concussion protocol. Cooper Kupp close to returning, maybe back this week. I don't know about you, Sharp, so I read somewhere, and not just somewhere like random, like somewhere somewhere reported that the Rams were taking calls or calling people about trading Cooper Kupp.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you hear any potential landing spots?
No, let me just
because the Chiefs just traded for DeAndre Hopkins. That would have certainly been interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp says he's aware his name has been mentioned in trade rumours before NFL's November 5th deadline, but he's focused on being the best LA Ram that he can be. That's from ESPN. So, yeah, I mean, the shopping him, as you probably would do, you're looking towards... the season's by no means dead for the Rams, but, I mean, it's probably the highest value that you're going to get for Kupp at any point for the rest of his career. You've got Nakua there as your number one. They're in a weird period at the minute, the Rams. But, I mean, it depends how much they want for him. I can't see the Chiefs choosing DeAndre Hopkins over Cooper Kupp unless like what they were being asked for from both teams was extremely different, which it must have been.
Yeah.
They must have been being asked for a lot more for Cooper Kupp. I would be getting really excited if Kupp went to the Chiefs. Not so much about the trade that actually happened, but we'll get on to that. So Kupp's going to be returning soon, but also he might be on his way somewhere else. And Deshaun Watson, season-ending Achilles injury. All of Cleveland can take a big sigh of relief. That includes the coaches and the owners. Big sigh of relief. The decision's been made for you, folks. You don't need to make any hard decisions. GM, owner, head coach of the Browns, it's been made for you.
And
they are, let's be honest, they are so relieved that this has happened. Do you not think?
Well, yeah, but literally because they fully guaranteed his contract.
I know, but I mean, the thing is, the money was spoken for anyway.
Yeah.
Which was the reason why the decision to pull him from starting was so hard. But that decision's been made for you now. So there you go.
Why wasn't Jameis Winston the backup? Are they?
Well,
is this a tank?
Well. If you're a bit of a conspiracy theorist, you might say that Jameis Williams was the emergency quarterback because Cleveland haven't played at home for about, is it maybe three 4 weeks.
Right.
They've not played at home in a long time. And obviously, since the last time they played at home, things have just been getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And they knew that the quarterback, Deshaun Watson, was going to be booed an awful lot this week. So I think the thinking is to limit the chance for Jameis, we put Dorian Thompson-Robinson on as the backup, because obviously they're hedging the bets, the thinking that they're not going to need a backup. But I genuinely think the thinking was, let's not put James as the backup because people are just going to be shouting for him all day, especially if Watson starts making some bad throws.
Right.
So I genuinely think that was the thinking, and it kind of blew up in the face as well because they did need the backup quarterback, and Winston would have given him a much better chance to win. Because Winston will no doubt be starting. But that's what I think anyway. Yeah. But and McCaffrey, hopeful the 49ers are to have him back by week 10. Trades and contracts. Big one went down. Desmond Ridder to the Raiders. Yeah, not really. That's not the big one.
You see the crickets and the tumbleweed after that one.
Yeah. Kamara got a 2-year, £24 million extension, but obviously we want to talk about Hopkins to the Chiefs. I'm not too excited about this. I think DeAndre Hopkins is kind of washed, maybe. But what do you think, Sharps?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a shot in the dark, really. Not quite Julio Jones going to the Eagles when he was like 35, but I don't see it going great. And I think Hopkins has probably still got a fair amount of that wide receiver one ego, and so being probably the third, maybe fourth guy in the pecking order. I mean, maybe he's at the point where he's like, I don't care anymore, I want to win a ring, and there'll be a playoff game where the Chiefs are struggling and he'll catch a 50-yard touchdown and it'll be worth it. So yeah, maybe he's just getting his head down and wants to win a ring.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's going to make waves of fantasy. I'd be surprised if it does. But yeah, we'll see. I agree with you. He wants a ring. He's going there for a ring. The thing about the Chiefs is obviously they didn't know that Rashee Rice was going to get injured. They didn't know that at draft time. I can't remember when all the off-field stuff happened with Rice, so I can't comment on that either. Because they don't know whether they didn't know whether they were going to miss him at any point. What I would say though is you're spending a pretty high draft pick on Xavier Worthy, who's really kind of a specialist gadget player, not a prototypical wide receiver one. And then you've kind of got people wondering why this guy that they drafted in the second round of the draft isn't proving to be a wide receiver one. And it's like, well, obviously it's because he's a gadget guy. It's because they saw the 40-yard dash and they want that on their team, but they're not playing like that anymore. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, before we look towards next week, I'll quickly walk us through some accountability for last week, and then I've got a fun little game to play with you, Sharps.
Okay.
So I mean, it was a very good week for you, is what I'll say. You know, McLaurin with the 15.8 was a nice game, unfortunately, because he had a pretty hefty projection. It wasn't a hit.
Yeah.
But you had Mark Andrews 20.1 hit, Joe Mixon 26.4 hit, and Jared Goff at 18.8 was also a hit. 3 hits for you, Sharps, climbing up the leaderboard.
Yeah, I'm just gutted that Daniels went down, or else I think I would have had my first ever 4-hit week.
I know. That would have been amazing to see. Lou had Jordan Love, who pretty much hit his projection bang on. He had Chase Brown, which was a miss, but he hit with DK Metcalf and with his tight end Zach Ertz. I had Brock Purdy, who had 17 fantasy points, which I could not believe considering the real-life game that it looked like he had. Devon Achane was a miss, but 10 points didn't kill you. What did kill you was Tank Dell with a goose. I'm on a bad streak at the wide receiver position at the minute, not loving it. But Jonnu Smith was a hit. Somehow I called Jonnu Smith breakout game. Don't expect it to happen again. But Sharps, really quickly, I just want to play a quick game of guess the top 3 with you. Stats leaders at this point in the season. Guess the top 3 leading rushers in the league so far.
Derrick Henry has to be number 1. Alvin Kamara.
You saying Alvin Kamara too?
Yeah, I'll take Alvin Kamara.
Who would your third be?
Ooh, couple to choose from. I'm going to go Kyron.
No, it's Henry, Mason, and Barkley.
Yeah, I should have got Barkley.
Yeah.
Has Mason got that many? Wow, fair enough.
Yeah, 6, 7. Yeah, but Henry's like 200 ahead of everyone else. Receiving, top 3 receiving yards.
Receiving yards. I think Jefferson's going to be up there. I think. I feel like someone interesting's in there. I'm fairly certain that Drake London's sitting as the wide receiver 3 on the year, but whether he's got enough yardage is another thing. I'm going to say Chase, Jefferson, Chase, London.
Oh, I mean, it's Chase, Godwin, Metcalf, but I think London's about 6 or 7.
Right.
I mean, Bowers is up there as well, but yeah, and I mean Collins is still 4th as well, but Jefferson is 5th.
I didn't realise Godwin was that high. That's even more gutting that he got hurt.
He had 50. He was leading in receptions as well. He had 50 so far this season, which is crazy. Yeah, passing yards. Josh
Allen's got to be up there, probably number 1. Mayfield, maybe 2. And I know that Kirk Cousins had that daft game where he threw for 500, but I don't think he's going to make it. I'll go to Allen, Mayfield, and Daniels.
Right. Well, you got Mayfield right at 2.
Yeah.
But it's Geno, who's about 100 yards ahead, number 1, and Purdy at 3. Crazy. Purdy at 3. I'm not sure where. I've only got the top 5 in front of me. I'm not even sure where Daniels or Allen are. What I can tell you is Mahomes is 16th, though. Couple more. Passing touchdowns. I think Darnold will be up there. He's not been throwing high yardage, but he's been throwing a lot of touchdowns, I think. I think Darnold's in there. I've got to go back to Mayfield. Maybe go Mayfield 1 and then Darnold. Number 3, I'm going to go for... Goff. Ooh. It's Mayfield 1 with 18, and then Lamar and Love with 15, Burrow with 14. Yeah. And last one, interceptions.
Who's thrown the most interceptions?
Yes.
Oh, goodness me. I mean, despite how good he's been, Jordan Love has thrown a lot.
You're right. So Love, there's 3 people joint first with 8. Love's one of them. Good. Who are the other 2?
Trevor Lawrence?
No.
Cousins?
He's got 7.
He's got 7.
One of these players hasn't even played all the games for their team, which is crazy. He definitely didn't start this past week.
Didn't start this past week. I was about to say Andy Dalton, but he did. No, Richardson started as well. I don't know, mate. You'll have to fill me in.
So Gardner Minshew has also got 8.
Minshew.
But leading the pack, well, I mean, I said leading the pack. Joint first is Mahomes.
No, it's not.
Mahomes has got 8 interceptions to, I believe, 6 touchdowns this year.
What? That didn't even enter into the realms of possibility of my mind. I knew he'd not been doing well fantasy-wise, but I had no idea he'd thrown that many interceptions.
No, he's been playing statistically bad. He's been playing bad. I don't think he's been playing as bad like in real life. Clearly, he's making clutch plays, but statistically, he's been playing pretty awful. You take the Mahomes name off the back of his shirt the other day, and you watch them play, and you're like, this guy in red is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, let's start looking ahead to next week. Okay, so I hope we left Lewis, just peek behind the curtain, I hope we left Lewis enough time there to add in some sort of jingle or something like that. I'm sure he can pause us if we didn't, whatever. We'll start off looking towards week 8, the way we always look forward to the next week. It's with...
Forget about it!
Yep, the Forget About It section of the podcast. Players that are locked into your lineup no matter what. Start them, don't think about it. You don't need to worry. So at the quarterback position, let's go Josh Allen. Let's do Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love, and Jaden Daniels if he plays, although I doubt it. He's got a nice hefty 22.9 projection at the minute, but yeah, we'll see if he plays.
Forget about it.
At the running back position, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry.
Forget about it!
Wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbours, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Drake London.
Forget about it.
And at the tight end position, you've got to go Brock Bowers and George Kittle if he plays.
Forget about it.
Yeah, I think we'll do that. We'll do that. So on to our projection beaters, players who we think are going to outscore the ESPN projections by 4 or more fantasy points. Let's get the tight end out of the way. First, Sharples, who you got?
Oh, I've gone for the man who is the absolute worst tight end to pick, because whenever you do, he inevitably gooses. But I'm going for Kyle Pitts.
Oh, no.
There's been no repainting, no new sealants in bathrooms. I've had a couple of long nights at work, so maybe it's that. But yeah, going with Pitts, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, projected 10.2, so not too hefty. We mentioned a few weeks ago that the Falcons had that huge game against Tampa Bay. Pitts wasn't especially great in that, but 15.8 points, 8 targets, 7 receptions and 88 yards. I would have been probably a little bit higher on it if Godwin and Evans weren't out. I think it would have been a bit more of a shootout, but I still think this Buccaneers offense is going to put up points, and so the Falcons are going to need to reply. I think it's going to be a mini shootout, and yeah, I just think 10.2 is a little bit low given what I think is going to be a high scoring game. So don't want to say too much, don't want to talk him up too much. But Kyle Pitts, who's having a steady season for a tight end, currently tight end 7. Could be a decent game. I'm not expecting a big boom game, but 15 points would be enough.
Nice. I am going to go Jordan Akins, tight end for the Browns versus Baltimore, projected just a 3.9. So he caught 4 of 4 targets this past week. So maybe this could be a thing, Akins, with the backup quarterbacks in Cleveland. I don't know, but even if he gooses, it's not going to be a miss. So I'm playing the game. Sorry, guys. Hey, he caught 4 of 4 targets this week. Okay, so
Mate,
they need someone to step in and fill Cooper's.
I am not the one you need to convince. I'm an advocate. In fact, I would class myself as a pioneer of this kind of pick. Yeah. But I know Lewis is going to be sat editing this, just absolutely fuming.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave a little gap here to if Lou wants to insert his picks. I know he did send them us, and he wasn't clear on whether he was going to record them, but if I do this, it means that he has to record them, so I'm going to force his hand and say, Lewis, read us your picks out after a long day at work. Thanks, Lou. Let's do wide receiver next, Sharps.
Yeah, wide receiver. Had a bit of a last-minute pivot on this one. I was thinking about Cooper Kupp. Obviously, first game back, no Puka Nacua. But something just swayed me off it in the end, so I've pivoted and gone for Amari Cooper, projected 13.8 points against the Seattle Seahawks. Nearly said the Seattle Supersonics. That would be an interesting game. Yeah, obviously, first game last week with his new team, the Bills. Good points tally, 16.6, but not quite as much volume I was hoping for. It came off 5 targets, 4 receptions, 66 yards and a touchdown. I think this is a game similar to the previous one. It's going to be a bit of a shootout. I'd like to see that volume go up. I'm wanting sort of double the number of targets, really. And if he gets that, you can sort of take or leave a touchdown and just assume that his yardage will make up for it. Seahawks, kind of team you want to play. They're a good offense, not a great defense. That generally leads to high scoring games. I think Josh Allen's really going to want to cement Amari Cooper as that wide receiver one option. I think that's why they brought him in. Been a lot of guys in that team, a lot of receivers in that team that haven't really stepped up to it. So I think I think we'll see a good amount of targets for him. And 13.8 again, a little bit low, I think, given that it's probably going to be a high scoring game.
Yeah. I will read Lou's out because I do think I'm looking back at our text and I do think he texted us as if to say read these out. We won't do that.
Will you do it in Lou's voice?
Yeah, I'll do it in Lou's voice. This is my impression of Lewis coming up. Hi, I'm Lewis.
Bang on.
His tight end was K-Dot on at 10.5. I'll do my wide receiver first. I'm going Lad McConkey, projected 12.7 versus New Orleans. Not feeling too comfortable about this one. He's only surpassed this projection twice so far this year. And this Chargers team's a different beast than previous years. I'm still finding it really bizarre what Justin Herbert has become like in terms of real life and fantasy quarterback, but I digress, I suppose. New Orleans are bottom 6 in receptions and yards given up to wide receivers this year, and McConkey is clearly Herbert's go-to guy. He's got 22 targets over the past 3 games, so you'd like some of those targets at times to be more high value than they are. However, I think McConkey could be a guy that gets it done for fantasy through volume alone, a bit like Michael Thomas of old. So I think we could see that start this week, and the 12.7 projection hopefully is going to be beaten by a bunch of receptions for McConkey this week. Lou has Jalen Waddle projected 13.6 as his wide receiver. Who's your running back, Sharps?
Gone for Kareem Hunt. Not a name I thought I'd be saying at all this season, but obviously the Chiefs snapped him up a month or so ago. Just has walked straight into that number one running back role. He's got all the volume. He had 22 carries last week against San Francisco, 27 before the bye. So that's exactly the kind of volume you want from an RB1. And against a team like Las Vegas, I think they'll be up for most of the match. I think you'll probably see another game of over 20 carries, and he's been pretty efficient as well. And had a nose for the end zone, 3 touchdowns in those last 2 games. So I think it's just going to be a case if he's going to get given the ball so much that he has to be a hit, which is the kind of players I like. So Kareem Hunt, 16.4 if I didn't say. Nice.
I am going to go Javonte Williams, projected 15 versus Carolina. Whether last week was Javonte's breakout game, it doesn't matter, basically, either way, because this week he's playing the Carolina Panthers, who are allowing 30 points to the running back position so far this season. Williams is a clear leader in this backfield, so you don't need to be a genius to work this one out. Play him this week. Lewis has got Josh Jacobs as his running back because Lou needs to shoehorn in a Green Bay Packer every week on his project. I don't know if you've noticed that, Sharps, but he does. I think he's secretly a Packers fan.
Yeah.
He's got Josh Jacobs projected 15.4 this week. Let's round off with the quarterbacks.
Well, all I know about Lou is he's a dirty thief because he stole my quarterback and wide receiver this week as I was cashing them in.
He did.
So I hope it's gooses all round. At quarterback this week, Al, I've gone for Sam Darnold, going up against the LA Rams. I don't think this one's going to be a shootout. Normally I like my quarterbacks to be in those high-scoring games, but I just think Sam Darnold going up against the Rams, they're a sort of middle-of-the-pack defense. I think it'll just be a nice, tight game for him. I'm expecting sort of mid-200s in yards, maybe 250 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, hopefully no interceptions. And given his projection is 16.6, that should be just enough to sneak a hit with a sort of 20-point mark. So not too much science behind this one. As I said, last-minute pivot as Lewis is a dirty thief. Sam Darnold. Oh, it is the early game though, so you have to probably knock a few points off him already. So maybe just a good week for him. Maybe not a hit.
Yeah. I'm going to go CJ Stroud, projected 16.4 versus Indianapolis. We're yet to see a true breakout game from Stroud this season, so I'm calling my shot on this week being the one. He's a lot better at home than he is away, so hosting the Colts this week in an already important divisional game should mean that Stroud has a good game and brings his A game, really. The Colts defense is also one that you're going to want to target because they're allowing almost 400 scrimmage yards per game, so I like this game to be a high scorer. I like Stroud's fantasy game to be a high scorer too. And Lewis's, in brackets, formerly your quarterback is Kirk Cousins, projected 16.6. So you say that Lou stole your quarterback and wide receiver, Sharps, was it?
Yes. No, sorry, quarterback and running back.
Quarterback and running back, okay, sorry. So basically, listeners can be assured that Cousins and Jacobs have basically been doubly chosen this week. They've been doubled down on. Obviously, you give us your kind of new choices, but you both wanted those players, so there's a lot of pressure on those players now, I think, because they've basically been doubly chosen this week.
There is a lot, although, I mean, up until last week, I've been a notorious miss magnet this year, so, maybe I'm dodging a bullet. Maybe I intentionally served it up for Lou to take the bait like a greedy mouse on a piece of cheddar. And
he took it, didn't he?
He took it.
As ever. What about the game tiers this week, Shouts? Week 8.
Can I surprise you, Al?
Okay.
You can call me miserable. You can call me tired after a couple of long days at work. I don't have any in the great.
Oh, let me just do a quick scan of the games and see if there's any that I might put in the grey. There's a few that would have probably gone in the grey about a month ago.
Yep.
No. I unfortunately have to agree. I mean, I think you can make the case for the Bengals and Eagles game. It's probably come a week too early if both of those teams are genuinely good. Mm-hmm. And the Commanders-Bears game, if Daniels misses, that's a real shame. Mm-hmm. But those are the two that stand out. I suppose Buccaneers-Falcons is tough because it's going to be at the top of that division. But yeah, nothing's standing out.
Yeah, so it's the first time ever. I mean, maybe in the past I've shoehorned them in there, but I couldn't do it this week. Nothing in the grey. I've got 4 in the good. 3 of them you just mentioned. Bengals, Eagles, Bucks, Falcons. Oh, sorry, I've got 5 in the good. Bengals, Eagles, Bucks, Falcons, Commanders, Bears. Obviously, fingers crossed that Daniel's going to be there. I think the Seahawks, Bills is going to be a good game and has the potential to disappoint, but could also delight and excite. 49ers, Cowboys.
Yeah. I mean, not looking forward to that one. 49ers coming off a loss to the arch rival. I'm not looking forward to that one.
Moving on to the meh. Shame here. A lot of good teams playing bad teams, cancelling each other out. Rams, Vikings, Jaguars, Packers, Browns, Ravens, Texans, Colts, Lions, Titans, Dolphins. I don't know whether Tua is going to be back, and even if he is, it's first week, so I'll put Dolphins, Cardinals in there as well.
Yeah. I'd agree.
Into the bad. Got 5 of them in here. We've got Patriots, Jets, Chargers, Saints, Broncos, Panthers, Steelers, Giants, and Raiders, Chiefs.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But I'm sure there's going to be plenty of fantasy points scored in those games, is what I'll say. Yes. Well, good luck to you. We're halfway through the season now. Hopefully you're either absolutely smashing it or you're still in touching distance of your playoffs. I mean, me and Sharples were just talking before we started recording today. I mean, even if you're on 3 wins, you're on 2 wins, you're probably either still in the playoffs, if not a game behind of your playoffs. So, I mean, unless all your players are injured and you've got 1 or 0 wins, still keep listening to the podcast, but it's probably not your year. But I'm sure everyone is still in touching distance. Keep making those moves, and we hope you have an enjoyable week 8. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.